There was a story that came out this last week regarding the civilian casualty rate in Gaza. A talking point that I'm becoming increasingly tired with, because obviously they're just targeting indiscriminately in Gaza. We know that. But the point is, the Israeli attacks on Gaza are not, defensible, even if they were killing mostly combatants, because, it's the same way that, like, even if the Nazis were killing majority resistance fighters in Eastern Europe, the invasion, the massacre of their goals would still not be justifiable, because those people are in the right, and that they pick up a gun to fight against the people trying to eliminate them does not magically make that death justifiable. Either way, though, there was a report released in the disgusting liberal Zionist outlet, 972 magazine, from Israel, regarding internal Israeli documents leaked to them, which revealed that, according to internal IDF databases, 83% of people killed in Gaza up until this point were civilians. They acquired classified documents that went up until May 2025, so that's quite recent, which themselves completely refuted Israeli propaganda, which has been claiming we have a good civilian death ratio, blah, blah, blah. The notion of which I refuted, and everyone, has been refuted extensively, but I made my own video refuting this absurd talking point quite a while ago now. Gaza death toll denial debunked. I made this 10 months ago, where I went over the idiotic talking points and how the evidence of this was already clear. So we know this already. We don't need literal IDF databases to confirm this stuff, and I really hate the way that this sort of evidence is given prominence, though the fact this is compounding evidence on top of everything else, because this is already well known. So to be clear, this is a massively disproportionate civilian death ratio in any regular armed conflict, even one involving a lot of urban combat. This is not normal at all. I went over this in my own video on the topic that I just looked at, and now I have to open again because I'm a moron because I closed the tab. To give you an example of this, if you look at the war in Bosnia in first half of the 90s, of 104,000 war deaths that were confirmed, 65% were military, 35% were civilian. So the fact that 83% are civilian and 17% are supposedly, according to Israel, military, out of the presently identified victims is an absurdly high, bad ratio that indicates beyond any reasonable doubt they are intentionally targeting civilians, or at least indiscriminately targeting Palestinians, regardless of militant status. Obviously, everyone knows that they're killing people in Gaza because they want to get Palestinians out of Gaza. They want to destroy them as a group. We know that. The immediate Hasbara talking point about this, best illustrated by a video that I'm going to show you here by Elon Levy, was very dumb shit that I'm going to deal with immediately here. They were rushing. A new blood libel is how he introduces this.
A new blood libel is going viral. Here's how to shut it down fast.
I can't wait to find out. Thank you, Israeli government spokesman Elon Levy, best friend of Lonabox and Destiny. Tell me how to shut this down fast.
The Guardian just published a headline claiming Israel's own data says that 83% of people killed in Gaza were civilians. Damning, right? But it's a lie. Just read the subheading. It says the IDF has identified 8,900 named terrorists. Those include the terrorists Israel was targeting in intelligence-led precision strikes, the ones it was deliberately hunting.
Okay, so that's not true. IDF procedure, when they kill a supposed militant, is they take a photo of the person, they search their body for their phone, they take it, and then they do take every measure to identify who that person was. So this is just not true. And beyond that, we know for a fact that on the IDF's list of supposed militants, there are journalists, there are doctors, there are people with no active combatant status, so we know that's bullshit as well. 8,900 is certainly an overcount in the first place, but that talking point here is basically, that's just what we've identified. How about the people who we haven't identified? We don't know their names. That also goes for civilian dead too. The vast majority of the dead in Gaza are likely not identified, for reasons that I went over in my very video here. Israel has systematically destroyed the means of identifying the dead, the capacity of identifying the dead that the Gaza Health Ministry has. Not just that, but even in general in wars, or especially in genocides, it's impossible to identify everyone who has died. So if this ratio of 83% was actually true, then we have no reason to believe that among the unidentified dead, that ratio does not also hold true. We have no reason to believe that among the people who are dead who as of yet have not been identified, there is not an equal proportion of of combatants to civilians. So that talking point here makes no sense. He's just lying, firstly. But like, what does he say next? But what about
the terrorists in civilian clothes fighting face-to-face combat in tunnels,
if they are in civilian clothes and they are fighting, then they would be listed as militants by Israel. Yes, Israel would consider those to be militants. What the fuck are you talking about?
alleyways, in booby-trapped apartments? Do you think they were wearing name tags?
Israel knows they have facial recognition. You know, they actually do have IDs. They have phones. They have ways of identifying these people. You know, you have precision strikes where you target individual militants or what you claim to be individual militants all the fucking time. And you're telling us that you don't know who these people are? And even if you did know who they are, there's an equal proportion of unidentified civilians who you've massacred.
That 83% includes combatants the IDF couldn't name and combatants who weren't even members of Hamas or Islamic Jihad. Frankly, it's incredible the IDF can name nearly 9,000 dead terrorists at all.
No, it's not. And they also can't name them because they haven't named them. And we all know that among those names, many of them are not supposed terrorists or militants. They are brave, resistant, you know, they just massacred 5 fucking journalists 2 weeks ago saying that they were Hamas members. Give us a fucking break.
Do you think the US-led international coalition fighting ISIS knew the name of every dead jihadist? Do you think Britain had a rolling spreadsheet of every Nazi it killed in 1944? This isn't...
I think that Britain did not kill 83% civilians. I think that even the US... I don't even know what they're talking about, like the US attacking ISIS as if the US was at all a main party to the fighting against ISIS. But ISIS was a big player in the Syrian civil war. And the death rate in Syria, like of civilians to combatants, and to be clear, the Syrian numbers include unidentified people, not like in Gaza. The Gaza Health Ministry numbers only include identified people. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, 26% of the dead were civilians, and 74% were combatants. And that's the main conflict that ISIS was involved in. And this includes unidentified dead. So, yeah, not exactly a favorable comparison. Lonabox's best friend, Elam Levy.
Britain had a rolling spreadsheet of every Nazi it killed in 1944. This isn't journalism. It's a hit job. And
a hit job against the poor little Israeli state, the eternal victim, just wanting to do an uwu massacre of babies.
To read past the headline, because the truth is that the IDF has done more than any military in history to protect the enemy's civilians from their own...
The enemy's civilians? What does that mean? The enemy's civilians? I thought this was a war against Hamas, not the Palestinian people. The Palestinians are the enemy then? Is that what you're saying? Ooh.
Own genocidal leaders fighting from tunnels.
Thank God you're protecting them by killing 53,000 of them. And that's just the identified people.
Underneath their feet. Stop this blood libel before
blood
it gets
libel.
out of control.
Oh no.
A new blood...
It's anti-Semitism. It's a blood libel. These fucking anti-Semitic Arabs, as Ethan Klein would say. Oh my God. Endless victims. They're victims as they massacre your children. They're victims as they rape people in the ass with heated rods. Always fucking victims. Anti-Semitic blood libel. Give me a fucking break. So another thing that I forgot to mention when I was filming this live is that this article also includes this frankly ridiculous chart that is now being reposted everywhere by really dumb people. And this chart actually downplays what is happening here. So let me explain why. It says estimated civilian death rate in selected conflicts. And then it actually includes like individual acts, isolated acts, like in individual cities like Srebrenica, Mariupol, and the Battle of Aleppo, for example, are all thrown in there, which does not make any sense, even on the face of it, because the broader wars of which those events were a part are also included in this chart. So what the fuck is going on there? Why is Gaza being compared to individual actions, individual battles as part of broader conflicts? It doesn't make any sense, right? It's like these were thrown in there just to downplay Gaza, just to have things that are ahead of it. It's like they threw these in there just to downplay Gaza, to get it further down the list so that it doesn't look quite as bad as it is. The second thing is that, one, Rwanda was not actually a real conflict. It was just people running around and massacring civilians. So comparing it to Gaza and how Gaza is sold as a war in the media doesn't make any sense. For two, the 95% civilian death rate in Mariupol is totally made up. What's being compared here is positively identified dead in Gaza to a made-up estimate thrown out willy-nilly by the Ukrainian government once or twice that doesn't actually align at all with their confirmed casualty figures. The Russian invasion of Ukraine actually has a fairly low civilian casualty rate overall, as you can see. This chart itself says so, 10%, and that's going by the Ukrainian government's official figures, which are the exact same sort of figures that are being used for Gaza here. So to compare Mariupol, which is a totally made-up number thrown out of nowhere, which has never been corroborated by any further actual evidence, with Gaza as a whole, which uses totally different, way more reliable identification methods, is a joke. Srebrenica was just a straight-up massacre. Throwing a single massacre of like defenseless people in there with Gaza is also a joke. Aleppo was one battle as a part of the broader Syrian civil war. Throwing that in there is also a joke. And I don't know if I believe 8% civilian death rate in Afghanistan. Give me a fucking break. Where does that come from, hey? The American government's own figures? So Gaza is even worse than this looks, because in this list, Rwanda was not an actual conflict. Gaza also isn't a conflict, to be clear, but there is at least armed resistance, and it's being sold as a conflict by the Western media. Mariupol is made up bullshit. Srebrenica was one single massacre as part of a broader war. Aleppo was one battle of a broader war. So when we get to like an actual comparable thing here, it's Bosnia. That's the first one that's comparable, and that has a 57% civilian death rate, far lower than Gaza. Then you get to Sudan, 50%, then you get to Syria, 29%, Ukraine, 10%. So those are the actual comparable instances here, and it feels like half of the things on this chart were just put in there in order to downplay Gaza by this liberal Zionist magazine, 972. They're just totally incomparable, and at least in one case, the numbers are straight up made up.